Welcome to a Prevent Connect podcast, where we explore the prevention of violence against women. This is a project of the California Coalition Against Sexual Assault.
Welcome everyone to our Prevent Connect web conference today, our Prevent Connect campus web conference today, I should say, addressing sexual assault on campus from implementation to evaluation. I am Ashley Klein-Jimenez from Prevent Connect in Calcasa. Prevent Connect is a national project of the California Coalition Against Sexual Assault, sponsored by U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. The views and information provided in this web conference do not necessarily represent the official views of the U.S. government, CDC, or Calcasa. So we do have a couple learning objectives today. They are to identify campus-level strategies to prevent sexual assault, to discuss the relationship between program implementation and evaluation, and then identify methods to overcome potential challenges to evaluation. And what's really exciting is that we have all of these guests who are going to be sharing their wisdom and their insight into this. So we will introduce them all as we hand over the podium to them, but I just wanted to show you that you're going to be hearing from all of these lovely people today. So the first person that I would like to introduce is Mighty Fine. And Mighty is the director of the Center for Public Health Practice and Professional Development at the American Public Health Association. So Mighty, I know that you have been involved in this project. APHA has been working with CDC on this, and it would be so great if you would give us a little bit of background and history on this project and where all of these awesome people from across the country have come from to do this work. So Mighty, I'm going to hand this over to you. How are you doing today?
I'm well, thanks, and happy to be here.
Awesome.
So thanks again, Ashley. So as you mentioned, APHA has been partnering with CDC for some time now, over the past few years, working to build state-level capacity to prevent campus sexual assault. And our partnership builds off of the momentum that all the work that CDC was doing in the space of sexual violence prevention. So it's a partnership that we certainly appreciate. And through this work, we've been using a team-based approach, and we've worked with over, I'd say, maybe 100 representatives in more than 25 states across USA. And we've engaged with RPE coordinators, state sexual violence coalition representatives, a range of campus partners, and even others involved in sexual violence prevention work overall. One of the tenets of this work is action planning principles, and what we've done is we've used those principles to frame implementation and evaluation efforts of evidence-based and evidence-informed strategies. And what we think is the benefit of that planning process is that it allows teams to develop a detailed plan and outlining the actions needed to actually reach their prevention goals on campus. And it's also a way to fully assess the purpose of their efforts and to make sure it's achievable within the resources available to them, and that's personnel resources and otherwise. And in this work, we've also incorporated principles from CDC's resources, such as STOP-SV, the technical package to prevent sexual violence, as well as sexual violence on campus strategies for prevention. And on today's webinar, we'll have representatives from 4 teams, Kansas, Hawaii, Florida, and Montana, and they've participated in some aspect of this work, whether it's the program implementation or the evaluation, and they've been involved in these capacity building efforts for some time now, and I'm thankful that today they'll be able to share a range of their work ranging from their implementation efforts, and some will even share on the beginning stages of their evaluation strategy. So without further ado, I'll turn it back over to you, Tori, to get us started today.
Thank you so much, Mighty. We're super excited to have you and to have all of the teams with us today to share some of their insights that they've had. So to start us off, we just want to hear about where you all are at with evaluating your campus's sexual violence prevention efforts, or your sexual violence prevention efforts if you're coming to us not from a campus. So if you see underneath the photo of me and the photo of a lot of our other guests, great, we already have some of you participating in that feedback poll. So if you are tracking attendance and participation, if you're tracking student participant beliefs and attitudes, if you are engaging in campus climate surveys, or none of the above, feel free to answer in the feedback. If we have, if you have something that you're doing for evaluating sexual violence prevention that we don't have listed, feel free to put that in the text chat. Or if you're doing all of these, like some of you have already been participating in the text chat to let us know about that too.
So Tori, it looks like folks are providing their feedback, and I'm going to go ahead and, oh, it's already being shared, so you can see how it's shaping up.
Great. So it looks like we've got a pretty even split between people tracking attendance and participation, tracking student participant beliefs and attitudes, engaging in campus climate surveys, or maybe some of us just aren't quite there yet. And this web conference will be really useful to all of us, including those who are already engaging in all of these efforts. So I'm going to go ahead and take this feedback poll away. Awesome. And I am super excited to introduce our first team from the University of Kansas. We have Jen Brockman. Jen is the director of the Sexual Assault Prevention and Education Center at the University of Kansas. Jen is also the recipient of the National Sexual Violence Resource Center's Visionary Voice Award and the Arkansas Attorney General's Crime Victim Advocate of the Year Award. With her, we have Nikki Cohen. Nikki is currently pursuing a PhD in clinical psychology at KU. Her research and therapy interests are in the area of sexual trauma and sexual communication among partner relationships. She is also a research assistant for the Sexual Assault Prevention and Education Center, where she helps conduct research to evaluate the many intervention programs that the center implements. So Jen and Nikki, thank you so much for joining us. And Jen, I am going to pass the podium off to you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. We really appreciate it. Nikki and I are going to share with you all just a little bit about the work that is being done here at KU. And let me just start from the space of talking about that while we would hope that folks address gender-based violence, sexual violence from a really altruistic space. Like we just woke up one day and we decided sexual violence is bad, we should do something about it. That's really not how change happens. The catalyst for change is often conflict, and KU is not immune to this space. And so one of the catalysts to make this change at the University of Kansas, we saw through student activism. So in 2014, our students really rallied and demanded change on campus in the way that KU both responded to sexual violence as well as the work they were doing to prevent it. It also didn't hurt that KU was featured in the hunting ground. So there are many spaces that led us to really take a proactive step on campus. And the outcome of these student voices was that our chancellor convened a task force with both campus, faculty, staff, community partners together who came out with a large recommendation list of things KU could do differently. Fortunate for us, a standalone prevention center was at the top of that list. And in 2016, we opened our doors with 3 full-time staff members dedicated to prevention work. We are a single focus office. We don't do dual advocacy and prevention. We have dedicated confidential advocates on campus. So we have the very, very unique and rare privilege to have an office with dedicated staff to prevention here at the university. And I bring that up to say that we recognize that that privilege is something that is not held by other institutions and by other folks doing this labor in this field. And so we always want to talk about that we recognize that this is a little different in our space. So with that, we are working within this process and this grant to evaluate this comprehensive work that we're doing, this comprehensive look at preventing gender-based violence. And so, again, we talk about this idea that we're kind of in a unique space right now. And it's not that our office has the magic cure for gender-based violence. What we feel like we have is a convergence of really positive experiences and a convergence of really positive things that have happened. We've got some right programs and the right people. And most importantly, we had developed critical partnerships. So while we are fortunate to have 3 full-time staff members, we could never do this alone. The reason this works is because it's a campus-wide approach, and we have the support of departments across campus, student organizations, community partnerships. We have over 170 volunteers across campus who help us facilitate our programs, put together our trainings, and really work from a collaborative lens. And for us, and that's one thing that we're evaluating within this current CDC grant that Nikki is taking lead on, is why does that work? How did we get to this place from an implementation review? And so those are some spaces that we'll talk a little bit about today as well. So within this specific project, our areas of focus is to identify these campus-level strategic plans for preventing. So we focus on primary prevention, not secondary or tertiary. But this primary prevention for violence, and the programs that we're reviewing right now under our partnership with Mighty is our Bystander Intervention Program. So we started with our partnership with bringing in the bystander, and then through evaluation and growth and change, and through the desire of our students to rebrand it, it is now called JGAF, Give a Flock. I articulate that very carefully every time I say it. And then we also will be evaluating our men's engagement project. And so part of that evaluation that Nikki is going to talk about is really looking at the impact, the feasibility, and the reach of this implementation.
Okay, so for the bystander intervention, I'm going to talk a little bit about the theory behind it. It's largely based on the theory of planned behavior. So first I'll go over each component. When we talk about perceived social norms, these could be cultural or societal as well as peer norms. So for example, I would have a problem standing up to one of my friends against sexual violence because they may not support me, or they would support me. So we're looking at how much peers would support you, as well as also rape culture and aspects that sustain rape culture, and then looking at decreasing those. So victim blaming, as well as slut shaming. And then we're also looking at self-efficacy to intervene. So with the bystander model, we're hoping to increase confidence to intervene, as well as looking at what barriers are involved for hindering someone's ability to effectively intervene. And then when we talk about attitudes towards sexual violence, first of all, we're just assessing students' awareness of sexual violence on campus. And then if they are aware, do they feel responsible to prevent it? And then what could help them feel more responsible in preventing sexual violence? And if we can increase more pro-social gender norms, more confidence to intervene, and then more awareness and knowledge of sexual violence, we hope then those 3 will then increase actual bystander behavior.
So we're going to walk into some of the logistical aspects at this point for how did this work. So when we're specifically talking about what we're going to focus on right now is our JGAF Give a Flock bystander training. So we partnered with bringing in the bystander and did our first rollout of this in fall 2016. And we had a really successful first year. So partnering with specific organizations, with our first year experience classes, and I believe in that first year we trained about 1,700 individuals in this training, and about 80 facilitators to help us through this process. In our second year of implementation of this, we trained over 2,000 students on campus, and that was largely through our partnership with Kansas Athletics, where every Olympic and non-Olympic sport team went through bystander intervention training, and this is that 90-minute training with 2 facilitators with cap sizes of 35 per class. We also partnered with our interfraternal council and made that requirements as well for chapters. And so that's how we worked, not only on an individual level like we did the first year, but then started to move this more to those relationship-based spaces. So we're working within pre-established organizations and groups on campus where we could expand that reach and touch. So then we come to our third year of implementation, and that's really what we're evaluating right now, was our desire to train the entire freshman cohort. So over 4,000 students coming into KU. And looking at that red zone, looking at the finite time that we had to really reach those students, the way to do it was going to be during their orientation before classes started. Again, we're an office of 3. That's not feasible by us. So the first steps to training all incoming freshmen in a single day, because we have lofty goal issues, is that we needed more facilitators. So we offered 2 full-day or 2 offerings of facilitator trainings. So one in June and one in July, where we're building up this cohort. We're building up our trainers across campus. And then locations across campus for these trainings for the training on the 18th. So we have our core group, we trained our facilitators that we needed, and then we had to pick the places that we were going to host JGAF Give a Flock on, for us, what was August 18th. So we strategically chose those across campus that were located close to parking and transit hubs for students who were off campus, so they'd have parking accessibility, and for students who were on campus coming from our residence halls, so we could easily designate them there. Again, we did the 90-minute workshops. We had 30-minute buffers on each side to help us get them in and get them out. We had to work ahead of time with housing and individual student organizations, such as our IFC chapters for their new members. Our new fraternity members can live off campus in the chapter houses their freshman year, which is unique and not something all universities have. So really working to get full rosters of every student who would be in attendance. And then we pre-sorted and put them into rooms, put them into their training spaces. We trained halls together. So we had a hall, say Corbin Hall is the name of one of our residence halls. So that we basically dumped that entire building at once, and that entire building moved as one mobilized unit to their training facility, and they were all trained in the same section. They were all trained at the same time for ease and continuity there. We also partnered with our unions for a guidebook app. And so this allowed us, and we were promoting this from the start of the summer on through orientation. This allowed us to market, outreach, and track our students and make sure they got continuous messaging. The numbers of this was on that day, on the 18th, we trained 3,980 students in that one day over the course of 121 90-minute sessions. We needed 105 facilitators to make that happen, and then 75 volunteers to work check-in desk, to provide therapeutic support. We had counselors and confidential advocates on every site, as well as just the general folks of meeting and greeting and kind of making sure people get where they're going to go. So it was a large undertaking with many moving pieces.
And then also, I'll briefly, real quick, the last step of that was designing the pre and post questionnaire too, which I'll talk a little bit more about. So we did a process evaluation as well as an impact, but here I'll be talking first about the questions related to the process evaluation plan. So first, what factors impede or facilitate the implementation of JGAF Give a Flock? And then also, we wanted to assess the reach. So did students find it valuable, and did they find it useful? And then also, how satisfied were they with the workshop as a whole on that day? And then for the impact questions, so these are more short-term changes. So these relate to the pre and post design questionnaire. And so for those, we asked students about their pro-social norms. So did JGAF Give a Flock increase pro-social norms? And did it decrease barriers to intervening? Did it increase self-confidence and increase student awareness of sexual violence on campus, as well as their intent to intervene? And then a long-term impact would be, did it increase bystander behaviors? So now going back to the process evaluation, we assessed facilitator as well as student feedback. So first I'll start with the facilitator feedback. This was important because facilitator facilitators were a huge part in the implementation. And so we wanted to understand how prepared they felt, how confident they felt in delivering the workshop. We wanted to understand how effective they thought their sessions were. And then also their views towards the training they received as well. And so how we can improve the training then for future. And then student feedback was mainly on the workshop as a whole, as well as their facilitators. So for quality control, we wanted to make sure the facilitators as a whole did their job, because maybe then the intervention would have been more effective if the facilitators were better. So we wanted to look for fidelity purposes at each facilitator. And then also for the impact, we did a pre and post design with validated scales. For the purpose of time, I won't spend too much time on these scales, but they overall assessed outcomes related to our questions. So they assessed the readiness to help, so responsibility to end sexual violence on campus, as well as perceived self-efficacy to intervene, and overall rape myth acceptance, because we were looking to decrease those beliefs. And then our long-term outcome would be related to students' perceived safety on campus and engaging in bystander behaviors.
So I'll talk a little bit in the next 20 seconds about implementation hurdles. While it came together beautifully and worked better than we could ever have hoped for, it wasn't easy. It was work and struggle. And part of that is we're sharing volunteers and resources during one of the busiest times of the year. Also, we're sharing space and physical time, because that's finite for our students, and funding costs as well. Our print costs exceeded what was our anticipated space. We had facilitators cancel at last minute, changes to student rosters, and not all students checked in, so we used swipes and having to double check. So while it was a big project, it was not an easy project, but it was worth the labor. So moving forward, changes that we will make as we hope to do this again next year is we will conduct differences in the way that we do our students check-in. We'll have longer breaks for lunch and not utilize our facilitators for more than 2 sessions. We'll have more printed copies when we do have tech failures, and we'll have refresher courses over the summer so that our facilitators feel more confident. And we're always looking to get better, and we can't wait to hear back and get some of your feedback of spaces that you think that we could grow with. And that's about it. So we look forward to hearing from our other folks on the call. Thanks for your time.
Thanks so much, Jen and Nikki. So there's actually a question. Kathleen has a question about the administrative process to have Jayhawks give a flock as a requirement for all new students. So if you want to head over to the text chat, I think that is a great question, and hopefully you can give some information on that. And I just wanted to say I really appreciate how you walked us through your thinking around your process evaluation measures and your impact evaluation measures. So thank you. If you all in our audience have more questions for Jen and Nikki, please be sure to put them in the text chat and we will try to get to them. So with that, we also have a text chat question for you. So we'd love to know how you are engaging students, administrators, professors, faculty, basically anyone on your campus or campus that you're working with in any implementation and evaluation efforts for your prevention work. So we would love to hear from you. And Nicole, I believe I'm going to respond to you in a second. So as you all think about that text chat question and answer it, I am going to introduce us to our next guest. So Rhonda Jackson is from the Violence and Injury Prevention Program at the Florida Department of Health, where she's championed public health for the last 25 years. And Rhonda, you've done a lot in the Violence and Injury Prevention Program. So thank you so much for being here, and thank you for your work. And Rhonda, you might actually be muted. I know I said you weren't, but you might be. So press *6 on your phone to unmute yourself.
Can you hear me?
Yay, you're there.
I'm here. I'm excited to be here. And we talked about the fact that we do these Prevent Connect coffee classes all the time, and now I'm sitting at my desk doing one. It's very exciting. So thanks, Ashley and Tori. Thanks, Jen and Nikki. And as Mighty mentioned, we all took different paths towards evaluation. So before I really get started, I do have to mention that first things first, nothing happens in a vacuum, and we are so grateful for our wonderful partnerships both inside and outside of Florida, and we couldn't do anything without the guidance and support of our Project Officer for Rape Prevention Education at CDC, Ms. Melissa Gibson. And we have learned so much from our partnership with the American Public Health Association and the Magical Mighty Fine, who I refer to as Magical, because every single conference I go to, he is there presenting, and then he's in my inbox when I get back to my hotel room. So how the heck is that? But beyond that, you'll see in the center of our synergistic circle-ish type object, Han Tavlik and Elvira Hansen, who are part of the Rape Prevention Education Program here in Tallahassee, along with our program administrator, Brian Weinstein, and our epidemiologist, Alan Mai. And then in the lower right corner, there's Mighty in a t-shirt. I don't see that very often, with our section manager, Michelle Franklin. And so together we work as hard as we can to make good things happen. But cream of the crop rises to the top, and the top of your slide you see the fabulous people who make things happen at the University of Central Florida, which is where we're visiting today. Christine Mouton, the Director of Victim Services, and Laura Vale, the Coordinator of the Green Dot implementation on UCF campus. I hope I do them proud today. So Florida, not only are we the third most populous state, meaning 21 million people living in 67 counties, but we are busy staying away from hurricanes. No, I'm sorry. Actually, we stand ready to help our partners in Hawaii and up the coast. 18 Green Dot sites right now that are contracted through the Rape Prevention Education programs, including 6 colleges and universities, 3 communities, and 9 high schools. We work together also with the Florida Council Against Sexual Violence, and we work with our rape crisis centers and other partners to kind of do a comprehensive approach to primary prevention of sexual violence. But the focus today is the University of Central Florida, which is a university unto itself. 67,500 students, which makes it one of the largest by enrollment at a single campus in the United States. Their main campus alone is 1,400 acres, so you kind of have to have really good tennis shoes if you're walking around. But beyond that, they're implementing one of our great Green Dot evidence-based strategy programs. And I am betting that there are a lot of people on the call today that are also Green Dot folks. And so if you would, just put in the chat. We'd love to know who our brothers and sisters are across the U.S. Shout out to the Green Dot.
And a better idea, they could raise their hands.
Oh, raise your hands if you're sure. Look at all of them. Oh, I'm so excited. Yay. Go Green Dot. Wow, that's awesome. I love technology. So because Green Dot is research-based and proven successful on college campus settings, the purpose of our evaluation was very specific to UCF's particular implementation. And to further hone that evaluation, UCF chose to evaluate one specific subgroup in particular, and that is their fraternity and sorority life. And so because we have so many Green Dot folks on, I don't have to spend a lot of time talking about the Green Dot strategy, but I did want to emphasize that it is a strategy that practices the theory of social diffusion. So you find your peer leaders and your innovators within subgroups like athletes, student government, RAs, or Greek life, You build rapport and an established connection to their own personal responsibilities in ending violence on campus. You teach them great skills, and then you empower them to go forth and model that behavior, which eventually leads to the social change that you're working so hard to see. In this case, that behavior is conducting interventions against escalating or potential crisis situations of power-based personal violence. In our world, we call those red dots. And power-based personal violence includes sexual violence, stalking, harassment, dating violence, domestic violence, and can also be considered bullying. And we work hard to address them all through a single strategy. There's those multiple forms of violence that we're all starting to talk about. So modeling behavior, and everybody who raised their hand just a minute ago are all working to support these same social norms change wherever they are. Zero tolerance for violence, and no one has to do everything, but everyone has to do something. It's a catch and release program, really. Once you get them on board, those early adopters do all the work. Ha, ha, ha. I know people are laughing. But the social norms changes really do begin. Luckily for us, there are multiple opportunities in the evidence-based program that present themselves for data collection. So we do a lot of data collection. You can see a couple of them, obviously interviews with face-to-face conversations and focus groups, the implementation teams, who are your key stakeholders. We do presentations that are considered overview talks, which are about an hour, bystander trainings that are about 6 or 5, booster sessions, in this case they're an hour and a half, and then those action events that we used to call awareness events, but now we call action events because everybody has to do something, and the social marketing campaigns. And social marketing campaigns are great pulses, but they're also a great source of information for data collection. Every platform has those analytics that you can pull from to see who you're talking to and who is listening. All of those informal tabling events that people do are a great place for surveys, and that clicker technology that we are all so fond of, and the things that you can download on your phone to kind of get real-time back and forth information from your participants. It's a great place to conduct a SWOT analysis. And then don't forget those presenter evaluations and open comment section. It's another great place. Pre-post tests we'll be talking about in a moment. And then fidelity review checklists, which we require at the Department of Health from all of our contracts to ensure that we're maintaining that fidelity while we're still talking about adaptations to make things make more sense where they're being implemented. And monthly narrative reports, we also require those, and it's great anecdotal information. We mine those monthly narrative reports, Hans and I, and we have found some really amazing things in there, like the ways that our sites are leveraging the NCAA requirements as a bargaining chip to dive deeper into the campus athletic departments, or how RAs seem to be an integral component, no matter what campus you're on, to a quick, successful social norming of the words green dot. We require an annual environmental scan to make sure we're not being challenged, or to make sure that we know what we're being challenged by. And then UCF also makes great use of campus climate surveys and then information they receive from Office of Conduct, the UCF crime reports, and of course, Clery Act. So when we sat down with Mighty and his consultants in Orlando, along with our key campus stakeholders, we were challenged to clearly and succinctly determine what it was we truly wanted to know at the end of the evaluation project period. And that sounds simple, but it took a long time to get there. But at the end of the day, we decided our big question was, if the funding were to vanish tomorrow, what information could truly help our team, Green Dot UCF, convince the powers to be on campus that Green Dot was successful? And so our key evaluation questions kind of follow along with our predecessors. And we wanted to know if fraternity and sorority life students were truly intervening in potential crisis situations, and if they were truly modeling behaviors that promote those new social norms. And we wanted to know if those booster sessions, which we think sometimes aren't as important, were really the basis for strong abilities to train in a safe environment that would help to retain those intervention skills and kind of facilitate an increase in those preventive actions throughout the fraternity and sorority life folks. And when I say fraternity and sorority life folks, I'm talking 4,000 students. And kudos to University of Central Florida, because they're not doing this presentation because they are currently overviewing all 4,000 of those fraternity and sorority life students. And then the chapters, the various chapters, have already requested some of those 6-hour bystander trainings, and they're being scheduled. All boosters that are being standardized, as I mentioned before, will provide those safe environment skill-based trainings, and we're also hoping that enticing people with more swag will motivate additional members to participate. So this is our pre-post test. I apologize. It's really kind of hard to read. We can make sure that Ashley and Tori have a copy and that you all can use it at will. It's also kind of based on the rate and scale, but we've divided it into assessing knowledge and awareness of violence and sexual violence at UCF, and those things have been identified specific to UCF campus that they wanted to hone in on, and then assessing that bystander advocacy. And I do want to point out that the APHA consultants, one really great tip was to take away the column that we all, for whatever reason, include, which is neither agree nor disagree. No, don't let them sit on the fence. You need to know a finite answer, and so that is indeed what we did. This is our assessment cycle, and as you can see, we are just now implementing our evaluation. It starts now and will continue through January of 2021, but that pre-test that you just saw is distributed prior to a bystander training and then after a bystander training within a few days. And then we will pulse again prior to the booster session. They will have a booster session, and that will occur November through January. And then the Greek life, which goes specifically just to the fraternity and sorority life students, will have those same questions that are on the pre-post tests in a different way, but capturing the same information, and that will go mid-April. And as I said, we'll continue this cycle through 2021. Challenges, we've had a few. That climate survey I was just talking about. The Greek life folks have been amazing in allowing us to have some space on a survey where they're trying to find out a lot of information, and of course you never want to overload anyone while you're trying to get those surveys out because you want them to come back. So looking at ways to truly identify the folks who have gone through the training in the booster during these project periods and how that's going to work and how many click downs we can have is something that we're still working through. The competing timelines, everybody has those too. Our contract runs February 1 through January 31, which actually goes through 2 sets of school years in a way. And our APHA project was April through September. So nothing matched exactly. It wasn't matchy-matchy, but that's okay. We're making things work. And then time management. This is a no-brainer. Everyone's busy, multiple responsibilities, and so it's better to overestimate the number of people hours it's going to take to be involved and engaged in discussion before you even actually get things down on paper. And then you knew there was going to be a Disney reference, right? Because this is Florida. Let it go. There are some grandiose ideas of evaluation in the beginning, and you eventually cut back drastically. That's okay. In the end, you got to, and the product is going to be of more value to University of Central Florida when it's exactly what they need it to be. What's working well? Willing partners. It's a win-win situation. And starting with an evidence-based program that is flexible enough to be able to be adaptable once you recognize where you need to make some changes, that's a great thing too. Expansion due to increased interest. Funny aside, the band heard that fraternity and sorority life was getting their own evaluation, and they want to get in on the picture. They're like, hey, come evaluate us next. We want to be green dotted. So there you go, expansion. And of course, I don't go anywhere without my Mrs. Frizzle. I don't know if any of you remember Mrs. Frizzle on the Magic School Bus, but she taught, and I take to heart, that we take chances, make mistakes, and get messy because that's the only way you really truly learn. And then finally, one last slide. We've kind of gone over these, but I wanted you to see the quote by our Victim Services Director, Christine Mouton at UCF, because it does resonate. Decide for the greater good, because if we invest in the safety of others, we enhance the safety for ourselves as well. And that, as they say, is a wrap from Florida. Thank you very much for the opportunity and your time and interest.
Thank you so much, Rhonda. I loved all of your, the way that you really walked us through comprehensively what you all are doing, and it'll be really excited to check back in with you when you all have completed those evaluations. And I do love Miss Frizzle. And then I also just wanted to point out that you inspired some connections in the text chat. So Aubrey put a call out for Green Dot sites to share their social media handles so you can all connect and follow one another. So with that, I'm going to pass it over to Tori to sum up our last text chat question and move us forward.
Thank you, Ashley, and thank you, Rhonda, so much for sharing about the great evaluation success y'all have had with Green Dot in Florida. And thank you to the rest of you who have been participating in that first text chat question. So our first text chat question was how you engage folks all across your campus, students, administrators, faculty, in your implementation and evaluation efforts. So I saw a lot about engaging incoming freshmen. Some people share evals with their partners after the sessions, which I think is great. A lot of it focused around partner and relationship building with other campus organizations like housing and dining, athletics, administration. We also saw some people who really advocate for good old-fashioned direct contact with folks that you want to be working with. I did see one that really sparked my interest, and that was having a committee of staff and students that helps inform evaluation and implementation. So thank you all so much for sharing. And we have another text chat question for you to ponder as we introduce our next presenter. So if you could use the text chat to answer what evaluation challenges you face, as well as what steps you take to overcome these challenges, and we'll report those back after we hear from Jen in Hawaii. So we have Jen Pagala-Barnett joining us from the University of Hawaii at Manoa. Jen serves as a program coordinator of the Women's Center at the University of Hawaii at Manoa. She coordinates the PAU Violence University of Hawaii System program to address gender-based violence prevention on all of the 10 UH campuses statewide. She is also a confidential advocate for students who experience gender-based violence. Jen, thank you so much for joining us, and I'm going to pass the podium off to you. Jen, you may have to dial *6 to unmute yourself.
How's that?
That's great.
Okay, thank you. Thanks again. Okay. There we go. Okay, so thank you to Prevent Connect and to Calcasa, Tori, and Ashley for bringing me on today. What a great opportunity for us to be able to share our programs with you. So I'm representing the UH PAU Violence Program, and I'll kind of be sharing with you today about how we've chosen and are adapting bringing the Bystander Program for our campuses. So just as a quick introduction, and a shout out to Mighty there, who you can see in one of the pictures, and we just wanted to give him thanks and support thanks for all the support that him and his team has been providing to us. So some of the pictures that you see are some of the members of our core team that has participated in action planning training for campus sex assault prevention in July of 2017, which has helped us to link the implementation and evaluation work that we're currently doing. So our team comprises of representatives from the Hawaii State Department of Health, Hawaii State Coalition Against Sex Assault, and then we have several campus representatives, and not everyone, of course, is pictured here. And then just wanting to give you a bit of background for context. So the University of Hawaii system actually comprises of 10 campuses statewide, so primarily on 5 different islands with a few satellite locations. So as you might imagine, geographically, we do encounter some challenges. And as far as partnership, we've been really fortunate for about 10 years to have a grant and partnership with our state Department of Health to assist in our violence prevention efforts throughout the system. The grant is managed through our office here at the Women's Center at the Manoa campus, which is our flagship campus, and we provide technical assistance to support and help and unite the efforts of each PAU violence group located on those 10 campuses. So PAU, PAU's mission, we use the acronym PAU, and PAU stands for Prevention, Awareness, Understanding Violence. And PAU in Hawaiian is also a word that means to end or to stop. And our mission really is to inspire, educate, and empower students and campus communities to build safe and living learning environments, end interpersonal violence, and encourage holistic well-being in ways that are supportive, collaborative, student-centered, and strengths-based. We have a few social workers on our team, so you might recognize those words for those who are social workers. And again, just a brief overview sort of what the PAU Violence Program does in terms of umbrella of different services. This is primarily on our flagship campus at Manoa. Our program here specifically does provide confidential advocacy, so I am one of those advocates. We do also have a student respondent support person. So for students who have been accused of Title IX and who is in an active case, that person does help the student to understand the process around the Title IX investigation. They're not a confidential person. We don't consider them advocacy, but they are there to support our students. We provide awareness education and all of these events throughout the year that you all are sort of familiar with, tabling, different sorts of campaigns. We do have a sex assault task force, and that task force is a multidisciplinary group anywhere from our Vice Chancellor for Students, our campus security, our housing folks, and it's really to help to improve the response to support our students. And our Bringing in the Bystander program and our Bystander Intervention program actually falls under that prevention education bubble there that you see. In addition to that, we do different trainings, workshops. We're part of new student orientation, trainings with athletics and housing. Okay, and our bystander strategy. So currently, we have 3 campuses that are trained and using the Bringing in the Bystander program. We started the process of onboarding 2 additional campuses this year, and the plan is to onboard 2 campuses per year and to continue to provide assistance to the campuses already implementing the program. Let's see here. So part of our strategies include a customized curriculum, and I'll go into more detail on this for the next slide. So a customized curriculum for the different campuses bring in the Bystander Toolkit, and TA training and assistance for the different campuses. So in terms of customizing, bringing in the Bystander for our campus, as you can see, we're in the beginning stages of our evaluation program, unlike Kansas and Florida. So it's been quite a process for us, actually, and I'll be honest, it feels like every time we met, our team met, it was like starting from scratch sometimes. It's like changing things over and over, so it's been quite a process for us. So some of the things that we have to consider in terms of customization are things such as we have diverse populations. So although we are considered very ethnically diverse, there are other things that we need to consider. The populations are different on each island, and even within each region of each island is tremendously different. Some of the campuses have things like a large international student population. Others have high student veteran populations. Some of our campuses have higher numbers of our Native Hawaiian students. So it was really important for us to consider those needs. Another thing is that we are, all of our campuses are unique. So we comprise of both 2- and 4-year institutions, for the most part that are largely commuter campuses. And our community colleges have identified that their curriculum or their bystander intervention program cannot disregard intimate partner violence or domestic violence, as that is what presents for them more often. Some campuses work hand in hand with their community partners, and others are more focused on building campus partnerships. And of course, because we're here in Hawaii, it's vital really to recognize and honor our indigenous population and the importance of cultural ties and values. So we decided to start our curriculum by connecting to place, which is a value that's really important here in Hawaii. And I'll give you an example. As by one of our campuses, Hawaii Community Colleges on the Big Island, their campus really includes, or part of their campus mission and value is around the Hawaiian word kauhale, and that means like a sense of community. So tying into that community value, the term is used really to describe a village and the idea of working together and that we're all responsible. So we thought that it was really important always to connect back to community somehow. And then, as you all know, there's a bunch of us that are we're doing this work, and we all wear many different hats, right? And so part of what we wanted to do was create this program and make it as easy as possible for facilitators to be able to implement it. So we hand them over a toolkit. The toolkit includes things like slides, actual slides, their facilitator notes. There's a slide bank that they can interchange certain slides and sections on that they might see they might feel that fits their campus better. And then also within that toolkit, we have data forms and different evaluation forms. And then we have also ongoing technical assistance that we provide for the campuses. This includes an onboarding process. Part of that includes a curriculum review with our core team to create additional modifications if necessary. The first trainings on those campuses are done by our core team so that the onboarding campus can really observe what the training would look like. It also includes the review of data collection, and part of the TA process includes really looking at your year and your implementation plan for that year. How many trainings are you actually going to be able to have? How much support do you actually need? Those sorts of things. One thing that I didn't include on the slide here, and I feel that is really important, is that we tied our bystander intervention program with student learning outcomes, and we're going to measure those through our evaluations. One other thing that we are also in the process of doing is rebranding. So we actually got some consultation from KU because we love their program name so much. We know that we want something that can resonate with students, so that's something that we are working on. Another thing that we felt was important is that we also wanted to pair any trainings that we do for trainers with the safe zone training, so that we're inclusive of our LGBTQ community and how to respond to them during our trainings as well. So, some of the critical partnerships that we have discovered so far is our state partnership. So like I mentioned earlier, with our state Hawaii Department of Health partners, we have an assessment and evaluation person, Dr. Virginia Liu, who I know is on the call right now, who's been wonderful in helping us understand sort of the whole evaluation and assessment process and language that some of us are not very familiar with. On the UH system level, on the state level, we did meet initially with our chief student affairs officers on each campus, whose division this work usually falls under. So we wanted to let them know about what we were doing, wanted to work with them collaboratively, and really ask them to support the trainers and this program as we implement them. On the campus level, we felt like the technical assistance was really important to create these partnerships and supporting each campus based on their needs and their goals for the year. And then really helping the campus build partnerships with intention. And as we're rolling this out, right, we're telling them that you don't have to think about training you don't have to think about training the entire student body. Not yet, maybe your second year, but how can we start somewhere, right? Like, who are your strong, influential groups on campus? Are they student government? Are they student clubs? Are they athletics? And helping to build those partnerships with intention. So our overall evaluation purpose is we are looking at a formative evaluation. So it's really to identify the factors that contribute to a sustainable and feasible model for implementing BITB across the UH system. And really we're looking at specific attention to preparation and training of the campus BITB team, the implementation of the sessions, and maintaining administrative and campus support. So like a lot of you talked about fidelity of your programs, how are we maintaining the integrity of the program? How are training sessions being implemented? And then we also have, so our evaluation purpose is actually twofold. The second part is an outcome evaluation, and that is to determine the effectiveness of our modified Bringing the Bystander program in changing UH community norms with respect to preventing sexual, intimate partner, and gender-based violence. So it looks like a big feat, and it is for us. So what we have decided to do is actually focus on the formative piece this first year of the evaluation, hoping that it'll help to inform the next 3 to 5 years on how we roll out and implement this program, and the outcome evaluation to follow after. So it's really the two main components are to think about how we're supporting our campuses and our facilitators, and then really looking at the curriculum and how we are modifying and changing that for our campuses. So in terms of evaluation design and key questions, these are just some of the questions. Forward to the next slide because it's stated there as well. So some of the evaluation questions that we are looking at is what are the components of the BITB toolkit that are useful to successfully onboard the new campuses? Are there components that are missing or that need to be modified? So we are looking at things like the amount of facilitators that we have, the amount of sessions that facilitators can actually implement per semester, the number of students that we want to train and participate with us per semester. And then we are using these types of data collection tools, such as we have a form that is a campus implementation plan. Looking at facilitator readiness, we are using a training log, and we have some event forms that are sort of on just Google Drives right now, and then we're conducting some individual and group interviews. The second thing is looking at what sections of the curriculum can be implemented by bringing the bystander facilitators routinely and effectively for different audiences. As I stated earlier, there are different slides and a slide bank that we can interchange depending on what campus we're presenting to. So those are things that we want to look at and evaluate. So, and also looking at things like what session timeframes have worked for you, the type and the size of your audience. Are there certain slides or sections that work better for particular audiences? And then lastly, what are the factors that affect the level of administrative support for bringing the bystander program implementation on each campus? And this is really important for us because you know, we want our facilitators to be really supported by our program. So what are things that they might need to help implement this program? So how is their staffing? How is their funding? Do we have to have some meetings with their administration to help in gaining support for them and allowing them the time to do these types of trainings? Okay. So again, like I said, as you can see, we're sort of still in the beginning stages, and we have started collecting some data on the initial 3 campuses who have been implementing these trainings, but really we sort of have a long way to go still yet. So this is just a few tips that Mighty had sort of suggested that we include before going into the evaluation workshop with them. So we did a lot of pre-workshop prep. We met with our core team several times before Mighty and his team actually came here. And that was really helpful. We really thought about what was important to us and what we wanted as a goal for our system. We did a pre-visit call with the CDC and APHA that was so beneficial for us as our team itself are at different stages of how familiar we are and how we sort of feel about assessment and evaluation. And I think it's really important that you find your core team. You know what that is, right? The team that actually does the work. So initially we had thought, oh, let's bring in, 5 people from each campus, and then realize that, of course, that wasn't going to work. So really find your working group. And dedicate the time and the work to do it. So like the other presenters before me, this has been a lot of work. And so just making sure that we're dedicating the time for workshops and meetings and planning to do the work before we leave, we schedule in our next meeting, those sorts of things, and just ensuring that you have a dedicated team that's really willing to do the work. So these are members of our Hawaii team, and I wanted to make sure that they were recognized because I'm just the face here. But all of us have been doing the work together, so I really wanted to recognize all of them. And I think, yes, and this is my contact information if you all would like to get a hold of me or want to talk further. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jen. We really appreciate your presentation, and if anyone has questions for Jen, please head to the text chat. Jen, I really appreciated you talking about the regional and cultural considerations in terms of needs, and really specifically your point about community colleges and their needs around intimate partner violence as kind of, the big issue that they're seeing show up on their campuses. So thank you so much for sharing all of that. I'm going to hand it back over to Tori.
Thank you, Jen. It was really great to hear about the awesome work that's happening across the state of Hawaii. Thank you all for participating in our second text chat question. It seems like we had a lot of folks that had questions about, are people answering honestly? Are they answering how we want, or are they answering quickly? And some tips that folks had to overcome that was maybe switching from a paper survey to an online survey to get some more of that honest, well-developed feedback. We also had someone else point out that there could be an issue with trust and historical trauma with some of the evaluation participants we serve. And how do we onboard and bring on program administrators and evaluators or evaluation tools that center the needs, concerns, and culture of our evaluation participants and of our students. So thank you all for participating in text chat question number 2. We have one more for you all to consider as I introduce our final team from Montana. So our last text chat question is, what steps will you take to advance and enhance your campus sexual violence prevention efforts and evaluation? I have that text chat question also in the text chat for you. So you can go back and ponder that as I introduce Drew. So I am super excited to introduce Drew Collin of the University of Montana. The University of Montana is one of my alma maters, so I am super excited to have Drew joining us today. Drew leads the sexual assault prevention efforts on the University of Montana campus. Drew also leads the direct services that are provided to students who have experienced sexual assault and/or domestic violence. She has worked with agencies across Montana to strengthen culturally appropriate responses in rural and tribal communities. So Drew, I'm going to hand the podium off to you.
Great, thank you. Can you all hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, great. So thank you all for having me. I am really honored to be here. Like my colleague in Florida mentioned, I often get to participate in these webinars, and they're always so helpful. So it's very exciting to be on this call with all of you. Our Montana rape prevention education and our flagship universities have been able to participate with the CDC and APHA for a number of years now. So I wanted to share the mission statement that we came up with. And this mission statement actually, we developed this back in 2015 when I first got to meet Mighty at a CDC APHA action planning meeting, the first one I ever went to. Really for our state, what we're looking at is actively promote respectful relationships, just and equitable environments, and violence-free Montana communities through consciousness raising, education, social justice, and collaborative statewide efforts. So, when we met with the evaluators, this was the lens that we were really kind of trying to think through. Again, I'm glad people brought up culturally competent and culturally aware prevention and evaluation methods, because that, of course, is at the forefront of what we want to do with our work as well. So I did want to, Mighty had asked that we kind of put nuggets of, helpful things that we found throughout this process. So I did want to make a plug that if you have the opportunity to attend any of the CDC APHA action planning meetings, that is what really helped us to get where we are now. So our partners are Montana campuses from across the state, and so currently there are 7 campuses participating, and these campuses include our 2 flagship campuses, so Montana State University Bozeman and my college, the University of Montana in Missoula. And then our other campuses that are participating are the satellite campuses that receive RPE funding, as well as we have one tribal college that is participating in the RPE funding, but my institution does provide additional support to our other tribal colleges across the state. And then,
hey, Drew?
Yes.
We're having some difficulties with folks hearing you.
Okay.
Is there any way that you can speak up or move closer to your microphone?
I will.
Thank you.
Yes. And I apologize, I am soft-spoken. So, and of course then too, we couldn't have done any of this without our partnerships with the Montana Department of Public Health and Human Services. And then we also have a strong relationship and a wonderful Montana Coalition Against Domestic and Sexual Violence. So they really help to pull us all together. And I'm so glad that my colleague from Hawaii brought up the concept of place. So place is a very important concept, especially I think in Montana culture. So many of our campuses are in rural communities, and access to services are really limited. And we're also from a very large state, so we're very expansive. And so traveling and connecting can be a huge barrier to a lot of our college campuses, and especially in our tribal communities. So really, again, participating in the action planning was so helpful because it allowed us time and ability to come together and to make connections across the state and to begin thinking about goals that we had and then where we are now, which is looking at evaluation. So back in 2015, many of our campuses were not providing widespread primary violence prevention trainings. So in 2015, our goal was from that session was we were really working towards getting campuses across Montana to provide training for staff on bystander intervention. So since then, not only are all Montana colleges required to have an online training component, so all Montana campuses require students to take sexual assault prevention online, but most of our colleges have implemented some type of in-person primary violence prevention training for their students. And again, that has been really, really helpful for us to have that relationship with the CDC and the APHA to make that happen. And then, so then this past year, I was also excited to see the pictures of my colleagues in Hawaii because I met them again in 2017, and that was just a wonderful, again, opportunity to be able to consult and talk with people doing this work from across the state, which if you're from a rural community, that is really rare. So that was just a wonderful networking opportunity that we really appreciated. So Whitey's timing was perfect when he called about this most recent opportunity to do evaluation on our statewide efforts. So as you'll see on this slide, our campus, and I should say 7 campuses have been doing some form of evaluation, but a lot of our campuses didn't have the resources to analyze the data. And some schools were also at the very beginning of developing kind of an evaluation plan and needed additional technical assistance. So where we are currently, so we're kind of at the very beginning stages of our evaluation plan. But with the help of the wonderful consultants that APHA connected us with and with assistance from Mighty, they have been incredibly helpful, and we are now in the process of taking a closer look at the 7 sample schools that we're looking at and what they're offering for in-person bystander intervention training. So as part of that, where my piece is I have collected the presentations from all 7 colleges, and I'm using the core blueprint guidelines, which if you haven't checked out, I highly recommend checking out. It's CORE and then blueprint guidelines from NASPA. It's incredibly helpful, and so I'm using that currently to do a kind of an assessment of what each of our presentations are covering and if we're matching up with what they're recommending. And so they list about 21 topics that they think should be covered in a primary prevention presentation. And then because of, again, culture is a big important part of what we do, so I have also added additional questions to that 21 questions or 21 topics. So for example, like my colleague in Hawaii mentioned, you know, are we adapting the presentation to fit the culture of that campus? And in many of our rural communities, they said they really wanted more information and focus on relationship violence because that was the issue that they were really seeing in their communities. So that's a piece of what we're looking at through our evaluations. And then, interestingly, I notice a lot of my colleagues are also, they tend to, like, you know, Florida is using Green Dot and Hawaii is using Bringing the Bystander. Well, in Montana, everybody's doing something different. So some of our schools are using Bringing in the Bystanders. Other schools are using Step Up, and then some of us have created our own presentation. So, for example, my institution at the University of Montana, we've created our own curriculum. So we've used elements of other trainings, and over the past 4 years have been adapting the training using analysis of pre-post assessments and climate surveys to adjust our content and delivery. We can't stress this enough, but pre-post assessments are just incredibly helpful in making changes so that you can reach your students better. And then since, again, we're in rural settings, my goal is to be able to use the content analysis to be able to help other colleges develop and utilize bystander intervention trainings that work for their individual communities. And then through this process, I'm also working on developing pre-post assessment questions that can assess shift in attitudes that can also be used throughout the state. And then additionally, the next point on here is that we are looking at our reach and the number of students being trained in bystander intervention at the 7 campuses. So again, there are currently many different models for reaching students. Some of the methods that campuses in Montana are utilizing is going to residence halls, attending floor meetings, providing training opportunities at orientations, going to specific student groups when requested, offering a training and inviting the campus to participate. So currently at my institution at the University of Montana, we are the only campus in Montana that has made in-person bystander training mandatory. So as you probably can imagine, we're really popular with students, so they must take our bystander intervention training in person before they're able to register. And we have been doing this for the past 4 years. And there have been, I could probably do, I feel like, another hour just on the challenges that I faced in sort of making that happen. But I also am really passionate about it and really feel that in order for us, especially at our institution, to try to do widespread prevention, we needed to make it mandatory that our students attend it. And so each year, my office trains over 3,000 students in bystander intervention. So as my colleagues in Kansas mentioned, it can be a really big hurdle for providing such large-scale violence prevention. And one of the biggest hurdles is really having enough people to provide it. So currently at my institution at the University of Montana, our training is provided by 2 student employees and myself. And on average, each year we provide 114 individual trainings per academic year. So we do a lot of individual training sessions, but it's needed in order to get all of our incoming students trained in this so that they can register for next semester. And so as we're looking about across statewide, and concerns that our other colleges are dealing with, one of the big concerns, and it seems like it's kind of common throughout the nation, is trying to figure out how to have enough staffing and how to make these large-scale prevention efforts happen. And so this continues for our state as well to be a major barrier that we are still struggling to address. And then where we are focusing on our evaluation plan, so we have, again, are going to be looking at staffing of facilitators and their level of training and the support that they receive. So any of you who do this work and train volunteers know that it can take a lot of resources in training facilitators. And so really trying to figure out a way to concisely train people so that they have the tools that they need, and that it kind of reduces, hopefully, other staffing time. And then additionally, we plan on looking at our different campus demographics, which will, again, help our individual outreach plans, as well as our evaluation of student satisfaction with the training content. So again, our state of Montana is very diverse, and so how we reach students really depends on place and the culture of that place. And then we also will be doing analysis of student satisfaction with the training and use this to improve our current efforts. So we are a very large rural state, and geographically it can be challenging for rural communities. So any of you who are from a rural community kind of know what I'm talking about. So it can be really hard to collaborate. If you are thinking about, joining APHA and CDC, I would really encourage you to do so. This process has helped our campuses to work more collaboratively together. We are engaging in more resource sharing and providing increased support to our rural satellite institutions, and we're working more with our tribal colleges. So again, I would encourage you to take part, and I would also share, because I thought as somebody who tends to overanalyze, I thought Mighty was very helpful. And on a phone call, Mighty said this to me, and I just thought I'd share it because it really made my day and made this process really wonderful. So Mighty, hopefully it's okay that I share this. So Mighty shared and said to me in a kind of a chill out, Drew sort of moment, he said, "This is to help make your jobs easier." Right? So I think, and a lot of the times in the work that we do, that's not something we ever really get to hear and to have funding and support around. So I would really, really, really encourage you all to participate if you can, because it has helped Montana propel us to the next level. And I would also encourage, I'm very excited to hear from my colleagues from Kansas and Florida and Hawaii. I would encourage you to reach out to us and those of us who are going through this evaluation process right now. So any way that we can be helpful, please reach out to us. Thank you.
Thanks, Drew. Thank you for going over your plan, and again for pointing out how each campus is so different, and so what works and makes sense for one might not make sense for all of the campuses that you're working with. I think that's a really good point for us to remember for folks who are doing statewide work. So unfortunately, our time has come to an end. I wanted to share these resources. These are available on our PowerPoint, so you can click through them, but there's just some more resources around evaluation specifically, including the National Sexual Violence Resource Center's just released evaluation toolkit, which is super helpful no matter what stage or background you have in evaluation, so I really recommend that you check that out. I wanted to just thank all of our guests today for sharing about your programs and overviews of your evaluation plans and implementation. Mighty, thank you for bringing us all together and for the leadership that you and APHA are doing in this area. And I wanted to just thank our audience. Thank you all for your participation and for being here. You will receive a link to an evaluation survey, and upon completion of that, there's an opportunity to download a certificate of attendance. We will also be making the recording of this session available on our website in the coming week, and we'll alert you when that's available. Mighty, I just wanted to ask if you had any closing thoughts or comments, and then we will be done for today.
Sure. Just thanks to everyone. Thanks to the states for all the great work that they're doing. I hope the listeners were able to take some pieces of what they heard and apply it as applicable. And again, thanks to Cal CASA for hosting this and for CDC for having for funding this project and this work and keeping us committed to preventing sexual violence. So thank you.
Absolutely. Great. Well, thank you all. We wish you a great rest of your Wednesday. And again, for folks who may be experiencing some adverse weather conditions in the coming days, we are thinking of you. So take care, and we will talk to you on our next web conference.
Thank you for listening to this Prevent Connect podcast. Prevent Connect is a project of the California Coalition Against Sexual Assault, with funding from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. The views presented on Prevent Connect are not necessarily the views of the United States government, the CDC, or CalCASA. To learn more about Prevent Connect, visit www.preventconnect.org. For more information about CalCASA's mission, or to show your support, visit calcasa.org. That's CalCasa.org.